Welcome to Algebra 1. The learning goal for this episode is to learn how to graph a linear equation by finding the x and y intercepts, then plotting and connecting the points. First, we need to understand some vocabulary. The x-intercept is the point where a graph crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is the point where a graph crosses the y-axis. Let's take a look at this graph and notice where the graph crosses the x-axis and where it crosses the y-axis. Here is where the graph crosses the x-axis, so this is the x-intercept. Notice that the y-coordinate of the x-intercept is 0. This will always be true, for in order for a graph to be crossing the x-axis, y must be 0. Here is the y-intercept. Notice that the x-coordinate of the y-intercept is 0. This is also always true. In order for a graph to cross the y-axis, x must be 0. This is often confusing for students, as y is 0 when you're talking about the x-intercept, and x is 0 when you're talking about the y-intercept. But if you can think about what those terms actually mean, and then visualize the graph, then it becomes much easier to remember. Let's look at some examples. We want to graph this equation using the intercepts. That means we're going to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and then use those 2 points to graph our equation. Remember, we only need 2 points to determine a line, so the 2 intercepts are 2 perfectly fine points to use to graph this equation. We'll start by finding the x-intercept. Remember, for a point to be an x-intercept, the y-coordinate has to be 0, so we're going to fill in 0 for y. Notice how we're making a table of values, but this time we're substituting in 0 for y in the equation and solving for x. When we solve it, we get x equals 4. That means we really have an ordered pair of 4, 0, and that point is our x-intercept, the place where the graph is going to cross the x-axis. Now we're going to find the y-intercept, which means we need to substitute 0 in for x. Again, we're using the table of values, but this time we substitute the 0 in for x and solve for y. When we solve, we get y equals 3. That means we have the ordered pair 0, 3, which is our y-intercept. Now it's easy to graph this equation. We plot our 2 points, the x-intercept at 4, 0, and the y-intercept at 0, 3, connect them with a straight line, and add arrows to the end of the line to indicate that it continues on forever in both directions. Let's try another example. We'll do the same thing. First, to find the x-intercept, we'll substitute 0 in for y. We then solve for x, which gives us x equals 5. So our ordered pair, which is a solution to this equation, is 5, 0, and that's our x-intercept. Now, to find our y-intercept, we substitute 0 in for x. When we solve for y, we get y equals -2. So our solution is the ordered pair 0, -2, which is also our y-intercept because x is 0. Now we graph the equation by plotting the 2 intercepts, connecting them, and adding arrows to the end of our line. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to look at a graph and find the intercepts. Most students find this pretty straightforward, but let's go through it. Here's our x-intercept. Remember, the x-intercept is where it hits the x-axis, so therefore y is going to be 0. So our x-intercept in this case is the point 2, 0. Here's our y-intercept, the point where the graph intersects the y-axis, which of course means that x has to be 0. So our y-intercept is the point 0, -4. We found our 2 intercepts. Now for our guided practice section. We're going to work through some problems together. You do not need to write down these problems, just step through them with me. At each step, I'm going to prompt you with the question you should be asking yourself, then I'll pause for about 5 seconds for you to think about it and answer it for yourself, then I'll show you. So, for this problem, our first question is, what are we trying to do here? What we're trying to do is graph the equation using the x and y intercept. Your next question is, what's our first step? Our first step is to find the x-intercept. Or we could find the y-intercept first, but usually we start with the x-intercept. So how do we find the x-intercept? We substitute 0 in for y. Now what? We simplify and solve for x. What's our next step? We write down our x-intercept as an ordered pair, in this case 4, 0. Now what? We need to also find the y-intercept. How do we do that? To find the y-intercept, we substitute 0 in for x. What's next? We simplify and solve for y. Then what? Then we write down what our y-intercept is. In this case, 0, -2. Are we finished? Nope. The problem asks us to graph the equation, so we need to graph it. How do we do that? We plot our 2 points, connect them with a straight line, and add arrows to the end. Let's try another example. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to identify the x-intercept and the y-intercept from the graph. What do we do first? Well, that depends. You could either find the x-intercept or the y-intercept. I chose to find the x-intercept first, so I circled it on the graph. What's the next step? The next step is to write down the coordinates of that point, which is the ordered pair -2, 0. Now what? Now we have to identify the y-intercept. I've circled it. So what's next? We write down the ordered pair for the y-intercept we just circled, the point 0, 3. Are we finished? Yes, the problem asks us to find the intercepts, and we have. Now for the self-check section. In this section, you're going to physically pause the video as you work out the problem on paper in your notebook. Then you'll press play to check to see how you did. You'll have 5 seconds to pause the video after I stop speaking before I show you the solution. Please pause the video and work out the problem, then press play to check. Here is the solution. Please compare this to your work. Pause the video here if you need more time to compare, then press play again to move to the next problem. Same thing on this problem. Pause the video, write down this problem and work it out in your notebook, then press play to check. Please pause the video now. Here's the solution. Again, pause the video if you need more time to compare this to your work. In closing, let's review our learning goal. We wanted to learn how to graph a linear equation using the x and y intercepts. We did that by substituting in 0 for y to find the x-intercept, and then substituting in 0 for x to find the y-intercept. Then we wrote the intercepts as ordered pairs, plotted the points, and connected them with a straight line, always remembering to add arrows to the ends of our line to indicate that the line continues on forever, as there are infinitely many solutions to our equation. It's important to really think about what x-intercept means and what y-intercept means, as students often get confused about which variable to substitute the 0 in for. If you think about the words themselves, then picture a graph, it should be much easier to remember which variable should be 0 for which intercept. Remember that you can always go back and replay portions of this video if you need to see it again.